All right, it is 6 o'clock. I will call the September 27th, 2022 meeting of the Wythe County Board of Supervisors to order. We do have a quorum with all members present. And tonight we have former Blackfoot District Supervisor, my former Rory Tree High School principal, Dr. Gary Hausman from the Berea Christian Church, to provide an invocation. If you would, please stand and remain standing for the pledge.
I have a short prayer, so I'd like to read 3 verses from book of Romans, 13th chapter, verse 1 and verses 6 and 7. And this is what Paul has to write about a righteous government. Everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there's no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. That's why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants who give their full time to governing. Give everyone what you owe him. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor. Now, with that being said, if you'll pray with me, please. Father, we thank you so much for the common grace that you give us to give all of us. The rain, the sunshine, the seasons. And I pray that this board will be an instrument of your common grace by providing safety and security, peace and comfort for the citizens of Wythe County. I pray that they will govern with discernment, with fairness, and with common sense. And that, Father, is our simple prayer. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before I leave, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, I still can't pay my water bill online. Okay? Just saying. All right. Hey.
You had my hopes up, Gary. I thought you were coming to take your position back.
Hey, it was an honor. I really appreciate you all asking me to do this.
Thank you for being here.
See y'all.
Thank you, Dr. Powell. All right, we're going to change the agenda a little bit tonight. We have James Hustler from VACO from Richmond here tonight to present an award. And so he can get back up 81 and 64 back to Richmond. We're going to bump him up on the agenda. So, James.
Well, I appreciate the consideration. I do love that road. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is James Hutzler, Government Relations Associate for the Virginia Association of Counties. It is my distinct privilege to present the VACO Achievement Awards. For the benefit of your constituents, VACO has existed since 1934 to serve and support your efforts as county officials. And we support counties in many ways. First is through our advocacy efforts in the state legislature and also at the federal level. We also serve counties through our educational programs, member services, and communication efforts. In 2003, we established our Achievement Award program to recognize counties that have adopted innovative approaches to providing public services and identifying programs that could serve as models for other counties to emulate. Today, I'm proud to present Wythe County with its first ever Achievement Award. Just some insight and figures about this year's Achievement Awards. This is the 20th Annual Achievement Awards program. We received 100 entries in 2022, and there were 29 winners from 21 counties. So the stakes were high. There were a lot of counties who entered, and only a couple won. Truly competitive is 29% of the entries selected as winners. This is Wythe County's first ever and certainly not last Achievement Award, and I look forward to driving down I-81 next year to come back and present. Just into the award that I'm presenting, it's on the project titled Lot 24, the Blue Star NBR and Blue Star Manufacturing here in Wythe County. It's been characterized as generational and a game changer, and that's not me characterizing as our previous governor, Ralph Northam. So this is the nitrile glove manufacturing facility going on Lot 24 in Progress Park. What stood out to me and the evaluation board and the judges evaluating the winners was that this investment is of $714 million to the area and should create around 2,400 jobs. and this will have long-lasting impact. This will have county-wide impact, generational impact, course-changing impact for the county, really. What also stood out to me was the patience of the board and, of course, the patience of the constituents of Wythe County. This was a long investment, decades in the making. It looks like that patience really paid off, as this investment and development are one of the largest in Southwest Virginia's history. This also serves a good purpose. Manufacturing PPE, personal protective equipment, is domestically is critical for our security and health as a Commonwealth and as a country. As you all may know, at the beginning of the pandemic in March, April, May in 2020, we had governments competing against each other to get masks, to get gloves, and that bidding intergovernmental basically warfare is not good, and it's nice to have a domestic supply of PPE, and so we're very thankful that's coming here to Wythe County. I really can't say enough good things about this project. It's my honor to present this VACO Achievement Award to the board, and I look forward to your application in 2023. So thank you.
Thank
I have the award.
Board members, you want to step forward? Here, y'all want to get it up there? This is Liz, we stole her from our little meal.
And I give Elizabeth a hard time, but Elizabeth and Mr. Hankins helped put the submission together, so even though she didn't get in the picture, she did a lot of work. Stephen, do you have anything to add?
No, I appreciate you all supporting the application. I appreciate VACO awarding that for us. Like I said, it's an honor to get it to the first board, and thank you for coming down and making the presentation.
All right, moving on to agenda, our next item is citizens' time. As always, I'll call you up and you have 3 minutes. We have one person signed up, Mr. Jerry Blevins. Mr. Blevins?
My domestic tourism report has not changed much since I last spoke at the Wythe County Board of Supervisors meeting. Someone loosened enough that helped the wash tub drain tight, causing a minor leak. While traveling on Pope Road one evening, coming from Cripple Creek area towards Route 94, I was approximately a mile from Route 94 when I noticed a pickup parked in the middle of the road. As I approached the vehicle, it started to move at a slow pace of approximately 20 miles an hour and continued that pace all the way to Pope Road. This is something that's happened several times before, and the advantage is that you can obtain a license plate number from the vehicle and display it on the Wythe County Board of Supervisors video recording system. It also notifies you that you are being tracked, and all someone must do is call a person close by and have them wait on you to come by. However, a 24/7 intense surveillance system has a much larger advantage, and since it is well known that cyber technology has advanced to the point that anyone with the proper equipment can see anywhere at any time, thus removing words and word phrases like classified and top secret from the dictionary. This should help Donald Trump on his defense of charges in Mar-a-Lago raid on his home by the FBI for progressing unauthorized government documents. I doubt if Donald Trump did his own packing when leaving the White House anyway, and probably did not realize his documents were at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump did a lot for this country by stopping illegal migration, ending the terrorist war in northern Iraq, and stopped the country from going bankrupt. He accomplished this by starting a trade war with China and placing a large tariff on incoming Chinese goods, which raised prices and increased inflation. Had Trump not done so, we would not have a country at all. The Federal Reserve has so far this year raised interest rates 5 times, and each time it has caused prices to go up except for gasoline. Slowing the economy and lowering inflation may not be related. Before the first interest rate hike, I checked 1-year CD rates at local bank, and it was 0.010%. And after 5 interest rate hikes, I once again checked the interest rate for a 1-year CD rate, and it is still at 0.010. This would mean that banks have plenty of cash on hand and do not need any more. Almost every time I go into a bank, I rarely see a busy loan officer, which tells me spending does not appear to be out of control. It seems to me that continuing raising interest rates will lead to more pain than gain. Inflation of 2022 is much different than inflation of 1981. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blevins. That's all we have signed up for citizens' time, so I'll close citizens' time. The next item on our agenda is the payment of invoices. Each board member received in their package a copy of the invoices. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Have a motion by Mr. Smith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Terry. Is there any discussion or any invoice that any board member wants to pull out? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Next item is our minutes of our previous meeting from September the 13th, 2022. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Have a motion by Ms. Lawson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Burnett. Is there any questions or corrections about the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Moving on to old business, we have our draft DERA plan. Mr. Hankins.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is a plan that the Fire and Rescue Committees had the chance to review. It was largely formulated from our rescue agencies. This defines who can and cannot be a designated emergency response agency in Wythe County. That power is yours under state code to make that determination. This plan spells out the response agencies, the responsibilities of anyone who acts as a secondary agency, so a private ambulance service, and defines the territories for the agencies. I understand that most of you have had communications, if not all of you, from at least one of the secondary providers expressing concerns about this plan. You can do a couple of things. You can adopt the plan as presented. You can adopt it with changes or recommend changes to it, or you can advertise it for public input if you'd like further opportunity for the public and some of the secondary agencies to provide input into the plan. We'd like for it to be the best plan possible. Mr. McCabe and Mr. Jackson from Lead Mines Rescue Squad and Assistant Chief Lineberry from Wythe Fire and EMS have spent a lot of time on this, and I think it's a pretty good plan, but we'll be glad to make any changes or revisions you'd like for us to.
I believe the last time we were just waiting on some language to get cleared up.
We can adopt the plan and modify it later on if we so desire. I still have issues about whether or not there's you can establish a penalty for operating without approval by the board or operating outside of the approval that's been given by the board. So I still have left that out. I did complete the form that is necessary for folks to apply to be a secondary response agency.
So if we end up having issues, we can always add that back in.
As long as it's permitted by
I mean,
code, and I'm still
if-
not
yeah.
100% clear on that.
Gotcha. Okay.
What's the pleasure of the board?
In my opinion, after sitting through fire and rescue committees for the last 5 years, I think the changes are needed, and I've read through it and I'm happy with it.
Yeah, and I agree with Madam Chair and Vice Chair in her comments. We need it. We need to do something pretty quick. After setting, it's kind of a learning experience for me joining the fire and rescue this year. And I know I've heard y'all talk about it for several years now, so I think it's pretty good in my opinion.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, we need to move forward with this plan. I've read through it and I'm happy with it as well.
Well, if somebody will attach their thoughts on the motion, we can move forward.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Motion by Mr. Terry to approve the plan as presented. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Ms. Lawson. Now, is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Thank you, Mr. Hankins.
Thank you all.
Next item is appointments. We have one for Mount Rogers Planning District Commission. I don't know that we have, unless the board member has anybody. I think Mr. Barrett's gonna, speak to someone to see if they're interested. Unless any of you have anybody. So we'll just leave that under old business. Do we have anything else under old business, Barry?
I do not have anything else.
All right, we'll move on to reports. We have the treasurer report, Mr. Wilson.
Good evening. We'll start with kind of the basic, usual stuff as far as the financials that were included in your packet. For August month end, our cash balance was $83,549,711, and of that amount, the general fund balance was $42,203,949. August kind of, I call it a lull month because it's right before taxes hit, so we'll start seeing a lot of those numbers begin to change over the next couple of months. But any questions on anything specifically in there?
I would just like to, if you'll look at page 56 of your agenda, just to point out one of the items to you on our water operating fund and wastewater operating fund. We are just starting a lot of capital projects, and you're going to see those numbers fluctuating quite a bit. So we'll be paying money out and drawing money back down, whether it's from DEQ or rural development or our loan proceeds as we go forward. And we will also be using under probably about third line down, the 111, 101, 000, the utility capital project fund. We will be using funds out of that to continue to pay for these projects and then have the reimbursements coming back in. So just giving you all that information, letting you know if you have any questions on these, because most of it is just engineering expenses right now, but, we've just awarded $1 million worth of pipe. We're getting ready to do another award or discussion tonight on equipment for the wastewater treatment plant. So there will be a lot of fluctuations. If you have any questions anytime, don't hesitate to give me a call and get the board package. If you have questions about it, let me know. And I appreciate Ms. Williams and the treasurer continuing to help us in monitoring and watching those to make certain we keep those accounts in balance.
And I can't help you with water and wastewater, so call Mr. Bayer. That's not my deal. He won't give in to my requirements to take that on, so he gets to keep that. Until I can break him down and he gives in. Okay. I knew it would be. I'm waiting patiently. I'll be in the new building in 2 years. We'll talk about it then. Okay, so moving on. One of the items listed under my report is a new ordinance regarding delinquent collections. talked to Mr. Bayer a number of times over the last several years, about needing to update an ordinance, and he said, well, put together what you want, send it to me, I'll have Mr. Farthing to review it, and we'll talk about it. Well, finding time to do that's been a whole nother situation. July 1st, we were closed for year-end closeout. I had time on my hands, and I dedicated to this, and I've kind of aggravated Mr. Farthing and Mr. Bayer to death over the last 2 months. But here we are, finally, where I've been trying to get to on this. But they've all had other things going on as well. Our current collection ordinance was adopted in 1997. Graduated high school that year. That's been 25 years. So this thing really needed to be overhauled. That particular ordinance only outlined the collections of real estate taxes. It did not address personal property. And with the real estate, it only covered pursuing delinquent collections and turning delinquent accounts over to collection attorneys or any type of collection agency, and pursuing those real estate taxes through a potential tax sale if need be, as far as selling the property. It also specified charging the additional 20%, which is the max that state code allows for administrative fees if we would choose to do that. It did not address personal property. So what I was trying to accomplish with this ordinance, and I'll touch on a few things here in a moment, was to add personal property to that in addition to real estate. We have numerous accounts that we obtain judgments on, and we also place DMV stops against folks. I'm just now getting ready to start issuing bank liens, wage liens, things like that. But we're unable to collect on these outstanding accounts. So this is money that's sitting out there that I want to pursue the collections of. A collection agency, collection attorney's office, however you want to label it, they have the staff and the ability to do that. I don't, even though there's 5 in my office, including myself, we don't have the time or the resources to pursue a lot of those. We do what we can. So with this ordinance, this was revising the entire ordinance, leaving real estate in there, but including personal property tax and other charges that we can assess the additional 20%, which the taxpayer ends up paying that. That is not a hardship on the county. We do pay it up front, but it is recouped when those collections come in as far as those accounts are concerned. So with this, in your packet, the copy you have has the changes that were made that are in red, and then some sections were struck out that were entirely removed from the previous one. So the major changes you see are on page 2 under the 2.1 and the 2.2, and that's just going through and allowing any account that's at least 30 days delinquent to be able to be turned over for collections to whomever we choose, which does require approval of a contract by the board. So caveat to this, I'll be coming back later to have my contract revised to pursue that as well. But this also allows for the administrative costs, the attorney's fees, any other collection fees, but not to exceed the 20% additional outside of the balance that is turned over to them. So I'm asking that, that you all hopefully have reviewed this. We'll take this into consideration and authorize the publication of notice for a public hearing in order to eventually adopt this ordinance. Any comments or questions of something I didn't cover?
I did have one question. We talked about if they're delinquent for 30 days, turning it over to the collection. Do we send any kind of reminder before it's turned over to collections? I mean,
I will say I don't do that within 30 days. What we do is, for example, our due date's December 5th. Technically, I'm supposed to send out delinquent notices within 30 days, but we don't. We wait until later because folks start getting income tax returns and they'll start coming in and paying, after the first of the year. So we don't send out delinquent notices till around March 1st, April 1st, somewhere in that range. So with personal property, referring back to 2021 year, we don't start pursuing anybody on personal property as far as issuing warrants in debt for judgments until around June or July. Prior to that, we're pursuing 2020 and prior if there are balances that we see that, we need to try to be collecting or, at least be getting a judgment against somebody because that'll allow us more time to collect on those. Real estate, once they're 3 months delinquent, we can turn them over, but I usually kind of go off of the rule of if they owe 2 years or more, is when I start turning folks over for real estate. So the 30 days, from my point of view, is not, that's not, I don't want to say a good time frame, but it just allows us, if need be, that we can start pursuing those collections otherwise, but I won't be turning anybody over within a 30-day time frame.
Is that what,
That's what this says.
It does. It says who fails to pay within 30 days after the delinquent tax or other delinquent charges have become due and notice has been issued. So we do have to issue a late notice, but, I think, and this is in here to allow us if we want to collect sooner, but at the same time, that's one of those common sense things in my book that, come January the 6th, it's not fair for me to turn you over if you haven't paid your real estate or personal property taxes. That's not fair. And like I said,
With you have common sense, but, this thing lasted 25 years before. You may not be the treasurer then, and the next one may not have common sense.
right.
And I agree. I get the point, but I don't love the 30 days either. I know you're not going to,
Yeah.
but
And this, like I said, just allows us to start those collections, but, and that language is kind of, I'm gonna say a general language that I found throughout other localities as well, was the 30 days, so I kinda, did a lot of digging trying to find other localities' ordinances and things like that to kinda have as a guide to, get exactly what we needed to accommodate us, but,
As long as the notice says, you've got 30 days from now, this is a notice, you're already late, you've got 30 days, or we're gonna turn it over, something
And-
like that, then I don't have a problem with it. but
Right.
Just,
And I will say, in that paragraph there, let's see, second line from the bottom in that 2.1, it references, code 58.1, 3958. And 3958 does specify 30 or more days after notice, so that kind of mirrors state code as well.
I thought notice was your tax statement.
Your original
that y'all
tax
sent
bill,
out.
that tells you it's
When I
due and
first read
payable.
it, that's the way that I read it, when the tax notice comes out, and 30 days after it's due, if you haven't done it, it gets turned over to collections, and
It can be if a second notice has been sent. Now, I will say, I know there are some localities that their taxes are due, around the end of November, somewhere in that time frame. They send notice, a delinquent notice the 1st of January, and they give you till the end of January. If you haven't paid, they start collection process, but I try to be fair about it, because we all don't always have that money on hand to pay that bill, and we may need to pay a little bit at a time, and it's not fair if I get that bill and, I may have half of it paid and I get turned over to collections when I can get the rest of it paid within the next 2 or 3 months or something, so. But like I said, that does mirror state code, because state code, says administrative costs shall be in addition to all penalties and interest and shall not exceed $30 for taxes or other charges collected subsequent to 30 or more days after notice of delinquent taxes or charges pursuant to, and it refers to another state code. So, like I said, it does mirror state code on that. Mr. Vaught, I know you have to have something.
well,
I see the wheels
It
turning.
mirrors state code, but it also gives us leeway because it says 30 days or more.
Right.
So we don't have to do 30 days, we can do 60 days, 90 days, whatever. And I agree with Mr. Cook. I understand how you run your office, but, when I look at updating a 25-year-old ordinance, I look about what the next 7 people that sit up here,
Right.
how they're going to interpret it, or the next treasurer, the next commissioner. And I understand it's 30 days after the notice is issued. But that's not to say the next treasurer is not going to issue the notice to 76. I personally, and Mr. Carter will correct me if I'm wrong, we can put 31 days, we can put 90 days, we just can't put 29 days.
That's correct.
So, me personally, I would rather put, 90, 120 days after notice. But that's my opinion.
I agree. I know we have a county to run, and I get the point, but, 30 days, it just, I don't know. I just don't love it. January is really hard on a lot of people. So, I don't know. That's a tough one for me.
And I agree. I mean, we got a county to run. I think Dr. Housen's, words are very timely tonight.
Yeah, I conveniently caught him in the parking lot, and I questioned why he was running away.
Maybe he read the board package.
And there is a lot of need, I mean, there's a lot of people that, I mean, January's a tough time. I mean, just look at
It
the
is.
sheriff's office and their Toys for Tots that they do, or Shop for the Cop or whatever. I mean, look
Right.
at all those kids.
Yeah.
You know, and those kids are getting it because their parents can't afford presents. And, I hate to see, I mean, it's gonna sound messed up from a government person, but I hate to see a kid miss out on a Christmas present because his parents are afraid of getting, tied up in court over a tax bill.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing about it is, I mean, I pay my taxes, and Mr. Glenn will tell you that I pay them on the day they're due. I don't pay them early. But in the past, there's been years that I had to wait to get my tax return, so.
And we all have those struggles. I mean,
Yeah.
we all face them. And it's at your discretion if you want to change that. I'm just primarily looking to be able to pursue personal property tax collections through another means. So
And I
the
understand that.
date, I don't have a problem with. If you all want to change it to something besides the 30 days, that's perfectly fine. That's your discretion, so.
I think it just gives you a tool to take weight off of your staff and, like I said, I agree with, the verse that Dr. House used. I mean, if you owe taxes, pay your taxes. But, like Mr. Cox said, you also, I appreciate the way you run your office and you understand that, some people wait till they get their tax return back. I don't know what's,
I would say no.
I would like to see 90. I mean, April 1st, that gives them 3 months, they can make payments or something. But, when you're looking at kids and Christmas, and then turning around and, I mean, I've always thought December was a messed up time to have to pay taxes anyhow, because of Christmas, but.
I ain't heard much from the rich side of the board. Us poor people over here has been talking.
Jamie in his money green shirt, right?
Let's go direct that, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, no, no, I mean, I agree. It's a bad time of year to be trying to collect taxes, and I think we all agree that. And I think the 90 days, that would be fair for me personally.
So, Mr. Barrett, what do we need to do? Just change that to 90 days?
I don't see any
and then
reason
set it-
why we couldn't just go ahead and change that to 90 days. And the only other minor change I would make on Article 3.3, all ordinances and part ordinances in conflict with this ordinance, specifically 97-6 are hereby repealed. And Mr. Farthing has that language in the beginning of it also, reenacting or whatever. My recommendation on this was not to do another amendment to a 1997 ordinance and have all this paperwork. So I appreciate Scott and taking the revision to what she recommended and putting this in a new ordinance. So my recommendation would be for you all to allow staff to advertise for a public hearing on this. I would do our first meeting or our second meeting in October to allow time to do the advertisements for consideration. I don't think timing is of the essence on this, is it? This week?
No.
What's that date?
24.
24?
With those two revisions, and we'll proceed with advertising.
I'm sorry, 25.
So or do we need to?
I'd recommend a motion to approve advertising as amended.
All right, entertain a motion to authorize staff to advertise the public hearing on the as amended ordinance.
So move.
Have a motion by Mr. Horny, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Terry, is there any more questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you for your work on that, Mr. Foley and Mr. Williams.
You're welcome.
And now you got
The
a
fun
due
part.
date question?
I have all kinds of stuff for this. Mr. Cook referred to the due date. We do receive a lot of complaints about the due date being around December 5th, and long, long ago, back in the day, as we all say. That date was standard in Virginia simply because of your crop farmers, your sharecroppers. You know, it's when you sold tobacco and you sold all of your crops to have money to pay your taxes, or you're like Mr. Horny, you sell all your cattle so that you can come in by December 5th, however it works out. And, you know, that may be something at some point the board might want to consider as far as moving the due date. You know, move it back earlier into the year. Maybe even look at going to twice-a-year billing on real estate. Just kind of throwing some options out there. A lot of localities have gotten away from the December 5th, and they're around November 1st or November 15th, 20th, somewhere in that range. They have a due date of November. Then some, if they bill twice a year, they do May and November, or they do June and December. So it kind of breaks it up. But, you know, it may be something to think about going forward. That's a decision that you all have to make on that. So just food for thought.
February 14th.
April 1st. So, speaking of April Fools, Commissioner and I and the IT director, we've been going a little crazy lately. Of course, I have listed on here the tax due dates, so I'm going to address personal property first, and then I'll address real estate, and then I'm going to bring us back around full circle again with a couple of things. Currently with personal property, Ms. Vaught has the tax book closed. We've been able to work through everything, no hiccups, everything's good. The files in my office, we're currently working on getting overpayments applied to bills, prepayments applied, corrections if things didn't apply correctly, things like that. I should be ready to send a bill file out to the printers probably by the end of this week, maybe at least no later than Monday, Tuesday of next week, so within a week at the latest. With that time frame, tax bills should be received back by all of us somewhere around the week leading into mid-October. So we're, you know, just a couple of weeks out. However, of course, the due date is normally December the 5th. Because of a multitude of reasons, I'm going to ask that you consider extending the due date on personal property, and we're only talking about personal property right now. Extending the due date to December the 30th. And my reasoning for that is upcoming holidays, and yes, we all like having the holidays off, but we're closed November the, Election Day, I think it's November the 8th. We're closed November the 11th for Veterans Day. We're closed a half a day November 23rd, and then all day 24th and 25th for Thanksgiving. So essentially, there's one whole week of holidays that we're closed. We are also in our Munis ERP upgrade, and with that, we have training days, and that's time that my office is going to have to be closed. We have our first training date is next Friday, which will not affect bills as far as collections or anything like that, not with the 2022 bills. We have training on the financial side of the upgrade, November the 16th, which also affects pretty much 3 of the 4 of us that are in my office. I've had one employee to leave, so I'm now one person short, but primarily all 4 of us will have to be in the office, or in the training. Property revenues training has yet to be scheduled because Munis cannot seem to find a trainer to come in or to, through the Zoom or whatever, to be able to train us on the changes for property revenues. So I have no idea when or if that is ever going to take place, to be quite honest. Our go-live date of this new upgrade is conveniently scheduled for December 7th and 8th, which is day 2 and 3 after the regular due date of the 5th. Both of those days do require our office to be closed, as they're transferring our data over into the live side of our system. Are you still with me, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Okay. You had a look on your face like you were getting ready to not be. So we have to be closed for them to load the live data in. So there's other office closures that we have to contend with. In addition, we all know that our vehicle values have gone up, and I think we're all going to be in tax bill shock when our bill comes to us in a couple of weeks. So with all of that being said, that is why I'm requesting the extension on personal property at this time for December 30th, is because of the training days, the holidays. This will allow folks a little bit more time to be able to pay. Being closed, I don't like it. It's an inconvenience to our taxpayers. They're the ones that fund the decisions that we all make every day of how the county's going to function. And for myself and the 7 of you all, they also put us in our positions that we hold as well. But there's not much I can do about it. So I'm going to move on, and like I said, we'll come back around to personal property. So real estate. And you may see Ms. Vaught fall out of her chair back here too, because this has been a bear this time. Currently, Ms. Vaught and the IT director and I, we've been working to get our mapping worked out for our camera bridge, which is what is needed to get the real estate data that Ms. Vaught has out of the Vision system, which was the reassessment system, into Munis, which is where our tax collections, billing, everything takes place. So Munis said that it would take 90 days to complete this camera bridge, and they were serious, because it obviously appears that it's going to take them the whole time frame to complete that project. We're at their mercy. We're at the mercy of Vision pulling files. They'll tell us 5 business days. It may take 8 or 9 days to get a file. The IT director is pestering them like crazy to get it for us, but they don't move any faster. So the problem we had was when Ms. Vaught or the IT director would talk with them, they would say, well, we're pulling the same data we pull for all Virginia localities. Well, Ms. Vaught and I have had the discussion. We must be the only locality in Virginia that asks for all this other information, but I'm pretty sure we're not, because what we're asking for is just standard tax data. So currently, the contract that Ms. Vaught has before her is to be signed off on by tomorrow, for Munis to give us a delivery date of October the 14th, which is loading the camera bridge into our training system for us to test the data to make sure that everything's coming over correctly. Then following that, we are going to have to do a complete bill run as far as closing out the tax book, generating the tax bills, do a full bill run. So that full bill run also requires, on my side, to have access to TCM, which is Tyler Content Manager. And this is what basically where the bills catalog into our system. I don't have that in the train system. So I will not know if our bills are going to come out correctly as far as the bill you receive in the mail, how that data is going to look, unless we put it in live and potentially have bad data in live. So after going through a billing process, then we've got to go back to Munis and have them to load this camera bridge into our live system for us to actually then be able to, in real life, do a full bill run to send our real estate bills out. Right now, I'm unsure when real estate bills will even go out. I don't have any idea of what to expect, because it's dependent upon this current camera bridge mapping that we have, which the IT director had spoken to the folks at Munis earlier today sent an email out to us late, and they believe that they have a lot of the data they need. We're trying to get a new file from Vision. There might be a possibility that that contract can be signed off on tomorrow, and we can stay on the October 14th delivery. So right now, I'm not even going to ask for an extension for real estate because I have no idea when those bills are going to go out. I will say it will be after December the 30th. I'm potentially looking at January the 30th, but it may even be later than that. The joke in my office right now is June the 30th. But like I said, that's the joke going in my office so we can keep our sanity over this. So, I'm requesting the extension for personal property. I'm gonna bring you back around, to accommodate the reasons that I'd outlined before. Again, not asking for anything on real estate at this time because that is still an unknown factor for us. With the extension and potential extensions, because that's where it's going to end up, I think will help because that will help us with our payment processing. It'll help our citizens, our taxpayers, because like I said, we're all going to have tax bill shock when we get that personal property bill. Real estate's going to be the same way with values changing. Even though tax rates changed, we know everybody's values went up. We get accused a lot by the citizens, by administration of holding bills. We don't hold bills, and I repeat, we do not hold payments as far as processing bills. We get so inundated with people coming in, with payments over the phone, with mail. We can only work mail as we have the opportunity. With this system, it's very time consuming. We have to search everybody, and it doesn't matter which mechanism you're using to make a payment, we search for you the same way, whether you're in person, you're on the phone, or you send in that mail payment, because we have to make sure previous tax years are paid as well. So we work mail as quickly as we can. It doesn't always work out that way. We do end up weeks behind. It's not because we just say, oh, well, we're not going to worry about the mail. We'll work it later. We try to get to it. It just is not in our favor. We do all we can. I mean, we really do all we can. But due to how we receive the data in, also contributes to how we have to search for people's tax payments. And I'll use Ms. Lawson as an example. She may come in to pay. She may be on a vehicle with her spouse. We also look up her spouse, but her or her spouse may be on a vehicle with one of their children, so we're also looking that child up too. So we're covering everybody because you never know who has previous year taxes that we need to collect, and our job is to collect to help support our decisions we make. So I've asked before, I've invited you all before, come when we're busy, see what our operations are so that you understand. I usually only see you when you send in your payment, but I will say my office door is open. My personal office door is open. Come anytime, because I can assure you, we're not just sitting around eating cheese and crackers and thinking we'll get to the mail in a few months and taking our merry old time. That is not how that works. So, again, I think if we go ahead and mail the personal property bills, that helps us spread out the collections, kind of help our office. Real estate's a little bit easier as far as processing payments, but it will, I think, help our taxpayers as well. So I will quit rambling, answer any questions, address any comments you all have, but going back, my request tonight is to consider extending the personal property tax due date to December 30th. And if the due date is either, if it remains at December 5th or it's extended, that way I can update my information and I can continue on and be able to get bills out pretty soon. So,
How late you staying open on December 30th?
I'm sorry.
How late you gonna stay open on December 30th?
That last week before the due date, we're always open until 6. And I don't know if the 30th is even a holiday this year or not, but I don't have a clue. I didn't even look at the holiday schedule.
It is not on, look while you're on.
Okay. And I'm sure our board won't give us a day off either, so. I'm joking.
Are y'all, all these upgrades were supposed to make all this easier. We've spent all this money. Why is it not making it easier?
The upgrade on the
Is it-
vision, the first part on the
Yeah,
vision software,
vision.
this is the first year of the vision, and it has been a learning experience. Both of these individuals and IT director have worked well on that, and once we get this set up and started,
Yeah.
it will be an improvement in the future, I believe,
And
is that correct?
may I add with that, with the reassessment team taking longer, because, you know, they were to be wrapped up by this date, and they came back and asked for an extension, and they asked for an extension, and they asked for an extension. That just continuously drug everything out even further. Because,
And I would like to say, you've also got a conversion coming from an in-house system to vision, and that's very unusual. Most of the time, it comes from one program to the other, rather than an in-house program. And it's
Yeah.
been very hard to get the information out and put it in a file so that it will go where it needs to go, to print bills, to do what it's supposed to.
But they knew when they bid on what we were asking for, we didn't surprise them and say, hey, by the way, we forgot to tell you. We were very upfront, correct? And they said they could do it. So I don't accept that excuse. I mean,
Well, and the vision part should be a one-year issue. Once we have this, and there's pros and cons of vision, but it is an improvement over the homegrown system that we had.
and that's what's taken a while, I'll add as well, because we're having to make sure that we get every piece of data out of Vision that we need or have at least used in the past that's come out of the in-house system, that we get all of that data into this system, because in my opinion, I only want to see the county pay for this one time. I don't want to go back in 6 months and say, oh gosh, we missed this, or we also need this, and they say, okay, well, you pay us this much and we'll redo it. We've worked and worked, we've come in, we've been in hours-long meetings, we've come in on weekends, we come in one Saturday night and work, the three of us. It's been nothing to have 2 meetings a week that'll last for 2 or 3 hours, if not longer. I mean, we've continuously been working on this. It's just, I'm gonna say kind of a slow process, because we are at the mercy of Vision and of Munis for Vision to get the file with the data we need, get it to Munis, Munis goes through, maps it out, then we have to go back through, and we're looking at a text file to make sure that we have everything that we need, so it's not for lack of trying, it really isn't.
and
Your
I
comment's
mean,
not lost, Mr. Chairman. I mean,
No,
and,
you're
and
right.
here, and here's the thing, I have absolutely no problem extending the deadline. It is not about the deadline. My thing is, when we spend taxpayer money to buy a system, it seems like every time we buy a system, all we get's excuses. And they drag it out, drag it out, drag it out, and I'm not pointing this toward the commissioner or the treasurer. I'm talking about these companies, and I'm sick of it.
We agree, and she's talking about the frustration, and Mr. Catcher has been frustrated.
Oh, we all are.
Yeah,
Has been
yeah,
frustrated.
it's absolutely nothing to do with
Yeah.
Lori or Kathy. It's, we spend this money to update this stuff, and, they knew what they were getting.
And I'm not making excuses for them. I think all of them are in similar situation, and it's the same thing with the loss of personnel. I mean, that's their challenge, where they don't have people training us. We've fought, we've argued. I mean, we hate to be closed December 7th and 8th, but
Yeah.
it was better because we met with them and we were able to back up this upgrade that was
They did
probably
have
gonna
us
be
like
a
in
year.
I think they had us like April or
to
something there at one
start, and we
time.
backed it up to start. Because we want to get it in faster, because the only way to improve our systems and to improve where
Some
Ms.
processes,
Glenn and one
yeah.
takes it, is to put the new system in. So, we're
And-
frustrated as well, understand the frustration.
And what's happened too is we're on the version that we more or less started on when we went live in 2016, tax side was 2017. We've also experienced those personnel issues. Most of you are very aware of how much David did for us as the county as far as IT support. I mean, he knew the system up and down. Unfortunately, circumstances changed for him. You know, we ended up needing to bring in new IT people. They've had to learn everything as well. But Tyler is also saying, okay, we're no longer gonna support that version that you're on. You all have to upgrade, and you have to upgrade by this date. And we're not the only locality in this country that is in that boat. Everybody is getting shoved to a new upgrade. So that's part of us trying to get this upgrade. UB is finally on board, so that helps as well. I am working, I've got some information from one provider to allow us to take payments online, which we won't even dive into the weeds on that tonight. But I'm hoping eventually we can get UB and tax online, where you can look at your bill, you can pay from there, or if you want to mail in a check based on that, you can. Currently waiting on Tyler to send in a proposal, but they move slower than the wheels of government do. And that's not saying a lot, but you know, we're getting there. It's just a process.
And just for the record, the personal property is not any issue this year. The
No, personal property is
could
not.
be
Everything's
on
good.
time. It's her request, and I think it's a valid request. She and I have had a long conversation about it.
Several.
I've done the pros and cons of everything to it, and ultimately I told her it's up to her what date is the best and to come up with. The
Well-
real estate is the change in vision, and we do hope that this is a one-time issue of getting the necessary software and bridges in place to do it. But I'm not gonna promise that.
I just hope people don't get confused by having two different
Well,
dates.
and that's the thing, because it's either,
I mean-
either a whole personal property, which I'll be honest, I did consider, but for all I know, it may be another 2 months before real estate's available. Do we really want to sit on a personal property file for another 2 months and then send them out? So that's, like Mr. Bayer said, those are the pros and cons he and I've talked about. My office staff and I, we talk about it about every day. In reality, what do you do? I think there's gonna be confusion anyway, because, sometimes with the mail, even though I tell the printers I want all 50,000 bills for real estate and personal property combined going out the same day, people may receive one today and the other tomorrow. Well, the one they received today, they wrote a check, they put it in the mailbox for the mailman to pick up tomorrow. He takes it out, he puts the other one in. They're calling and fussing because we didn't send them both out at the same time for them to write one check. It's things we can't control. We're getting bombarded now with phone calls, but since there's no guard in the building either, we're also the information center for our building for general district, circuit, early voting, which they walk right by when they come in the door. Wytheville Police Department, Building Department, everybody comes to us. So, but we're also the ones that get blamed for everything, because the office that I'm over is the one that sends everybody their bills. So, and ultimately, the due date is your all's decision. If you choose to leave it December 5th, that is your choice. You all are the ones that vote on that, not I. I can only make a recommendation.
Well, we'll take care of that real quick. I'll entertain a motion to change the due date from personal property to December the 30th.
So moved.
Have a
Second.
motion by Mr. Cook, a second by Mr. Smith. Is there any more questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Aye.
I'll shut up, thank you. And I'll be back on real estate whenever Mrs. Vaught and I can, and Mr. Patrick can make some headway on that and figure out exactly what's going on, so, thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
All right, we have the commissioner, Ms. Vaught. Do you have anything?
I don't have anything that Lori hadn't already said.
We're gonna
She
start,
doesn't
we're
want
gonna
to
start
talk.
putting you first.
She did good.
All right, we have the sheriff, Sheriff Foster. You have anything? All right, moving on to new business, we have our consent calendar. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Terry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Horny. Is there any questions or comments on the consent calendar? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So approved. Next, we have VDOT matters. I believe we have Mr. Fowler and company in attendance. Come on up. You got 3 minutes.
I brought some support, a minute each.
Yeah. However you want to divide it.
Right. Well, actually, in an effort to more thoroughly answer questions and respond to any issues, I spoke with Stephen recently and asked if he could go ahead of time and email me some of the questions that you guys have on your mind and need response to. So he did that. We have a list, and I guess fortunately for me, most of that list pertains to what Pam has been working on. So what I'm going to do is, she has the list. I'm going to let Pam respond to some questions that you guys have, and then when she's finished with the list, I'll come back up, and then you guys can hit me with anything that may have come up since Stephen sent me the email. So,
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello.
The first on Mr. Bear's list was Progress Park guardrail damage. And the question was asked, why is it so close to the road? And it had to be installed, there's regulations about how far the posts have to be driven into the ground away from utilities. And there's a gas line and I think a water line in that vicinity. So the post had to stay away from that, and that's why it's kind of closer to the road in some sections. And it really can't be moved back because the posts have to go so far in the ground, they could impact the water line or the gas line. The only other option there, if we take the guardrail down, we could put up concrete barrier wall. That sits above the ground, so there's no post to interfere with the underground utilities.
Yeah, and the reason for the question, Ms. Heath, is the guardrail's back up to a certain point, then it kind of fades into the road, and then it fades back out of the road. So I don't know if those lines are coming under the road right there, or what the deal is, but it's getting beat up pretty bad by the semi-traffic that's over there.
And I sent that question to central office for a special guardrail design division, and that they were the ones that suggested the concrete barrier wall because of the utilities. And they are a little bit closer to the road in that section. That's why it kind of curves out away from them.
So with that said, I'll speak up on the concrete barrier wall. What we're going to do is we're going to look into that as an option because we can set it further away from the road. And it can be, if utilities need to be worked on, or if there's any issue with the gas line or water line, then the barrier wall can be moved. And so we're talking about the Jersey barrier wall that basically you can link those together. And we would have to provide end protection on both ends of the wall. But we're going to look into the cost of doing that. Feasible, take the guardrail out, put the concrete barrier wall up, see if that serves the need there. So.
Yeah, where it sits above ground, we can put it anywhere.
You
Get it
might
up.
sell sponsorship to like Body Shop. and could probably address that cost real quick.
Towing services?
Yeah.
Okay, that was number one. And number 2 and 3, I think, are basically the same question, was the Route 52 speed limit request and the Route 94 speed limit request, and I think you're the ones that requested that. Any speed changes, any requests to make speed changes on the roads have to go to the district traffic engineer. The residency doesn't have the authority to lower or raise speed limits. And the district traffic engineer has to look at certain things by regulation before he can raise or lower the speed limit. And some of that is, or some of those are, if there's been any significant increase in the frequency or severity of crashes, if there's no significant in traffic volumes or roadside development. And so that's some of the criteria he uses for these roads. And in both Route 94 and Route 52, he didn't find that the severity of crashes had increased, or that any roadside development had increased, and none of the frequency of severity of crashes had increased. So that's why he did not lower the speed on either one of those roads.
So on State Route 52, we're trying to avoid crashes because you're coming into a blind area there, and the volume of traffic. If he's saying that the volume of traffic hasn't increased, he needs to come back. Because 77 every weekend every Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's issues on 77, they come on 52. The ag industry, traffic has picked up in that area. You got a major ag farmer there. You got a trucking company, it's right there on Red Hollow Road. That truck traffic's picked up. You've got the Lead Mines Rescue Squad building there, and then you got a farmer that's got property on both sides of the road. So
And I
we're-
can bring those issues to him and explain to him, and it may be something that they could count traffic on a weekend to, to check for any increases in traffic volumes.
Yeah, and I mean, and I don't wanna put Sheriff Foster on the spot, but he's back there, and his department has to manage through that, and the traffic down there is just, I mean, you've seen the studies from the speed, that was presented to us for the cameras in the school zones. I mean, it's, in my opinion, something needs to be done, because what happened, a week or so back, we don't need to lose another life because they're trying to take care of their family with their farming, crossing the road. That's what we're trying to avoid.
I understand. I made a note. I'll take it back to him and ask him about the weekend traffic counts and see if that might change their review of those sites.
Who sets those parameters?
Code of Virginia.
So the General Assembly? And I understand that it goes to, the district office and not the local office, which I absolutely disagree with, because, the local office people travel these roads, but, some of their parameters are just, I don't agree with. And, I communicated with Mr. Fowler, I don't know, a couple of years ago about Four Seasons Road. It's 55 miles an hour. There's a sawmill, and I have yet, VDOT said they're not gonna change the speed limit. It's unmarked, it's 55. I just want somebody from Virginia Department of Transportation to tell me that it is perfectly safe for an 80,000-pound log truck to travel through that residential area. Mr. Fowler forwarded me the engineer department, they forwarded me. I've yet to get somebody that will go on record and say it is perfectly safe for them log trucks to run 55. If you can't put your name on that, then there's a problem. So we need this January to address to the General Assembly and VACO, there's gotta be some common sense. Now, it might work in Richmond, but it's not working in Southwest Virginia. Our fatality rates in Southwest Virginia as a whole are up. But every time we get complaints from citizens or we see problems,
And I don't know if you want this or not, but I printed out the codes and
Oh, I'd
some of the
absolutely love to have it.
Okay, I'll give them to Mr. Bear and, before I leave. But then that takes me to number 4, Cripple Creek, Slate Spring Branch, watch returning vehicle signs. We have that scheduled to be, reviewed, and, if they feel like there's a need there, after the review, they will install those signs. I'm gonna back up and say it's a traffic engineering division sign department, or sign division, that they'll install that sign. But it is on the schedule to be studied. If there's no questions about that, the last one was, the Route 9452 school intersection, highway safety improvement program, options for improvements. And, in talking to the traffic engineer, the way this current highway safety improvement program was rolled out, that is not a good candidate for highway safety improvement funds. It's because they have to be ready to go shovel ready by like the first of the year.
Is this the same engineer that done the traffic count?
Yes.
We need that person to come up here. I would like a personal conversation with him. You got 2 schools, you got a middle school and a high school there. They're crossing the road. The traffic count's already up, people running well over the speed limit. That's why we supporting these cameras. And I don't understand, you can't put a price on a life, period. That's it, that's period. A life is, you can't replace a human life. And these people need to understand that. If it was their children down there crossing that road to get something to eat between events, they would have a different thought.
Well, let me just explain that the Highway Safety Improvement Program, it's based on a benefit to cost ratio, and fatalities are what drives your benefit to cost ratio. Unfortunately, fatalities are what gets this funding moving to Northern Virginia because of the higher volumes of traffic.
So if we had more fatalities, we would get the money.
It's a
And
terrible
we don't
thing.
want that. That's what we're trying to avoid.
It's a terrible thing to say, but when these other areas compete for that same funding, because they do have fatalities, they get the funding. And,
So what I need to do is reach out to the governor and say, hey, I need my tax money back because it's not benefiting me and my people that I'm representing in Wythe County.
Amen to that, brother.
That's where I'm at right now. And I'm not throwing darts at you. I know you're the messenger, but that's how we feel down here.
I
You
understand.
just said all the money's going to Fairfax.
Well, I mean, we do have some projects that get
That's gotta
funded.
change.
But it's really the crash data that drives these highway system improvement program funding. But what I did recommend was the Safe Routes to Schools program. And that carries some funding with it that may help this project on Route 52 and 94 intersection there. And I think Ms. Dell is working with the coordinator of that program to apply for some funds. Yes.
Yeah, and the response we received from them, just a week or so ago, was that, for us to no longer continue on the grant application there, that it was not in line with their program. So, they're recommending that we look with, like locality infrastructure grants or transportation alternative programs. So, we're 0 for 2 on our attempts with VDOT, so we request your assistance on, transportation alternatives program, which, if there's something there that we can apply for, to work with. But they told us to completely stop on the Safe Routes to School, that it did not meet what they were looking at.
So it's too safe for that grant program,
Not safe enough.
not safe enough for this.
Yeah.
And you know, the bad part is, if we went down there and spent county money to build a bridge, we'd get in trouble because we didn't get a permit.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
or we wouldn't get approved to put the signage up or something.
If you could assist with that one or any other avenues on that, we'd like to work with it, because we definitely want to put some crosswalks up, and I don't want to just go paint them on the road, so,
Okay, that's called TAP funding, that
Yeah.
and I'll check into that and see what we need to do to get an application for it. But I think that was it for your questions.
I have a question. Where's the engineer? Where is he or she at?
Bristol,
In Bristol?
the district office.
Awesome. See if they'll come down for a meeting.
Better than Richmond, that's where I heard she's
I figured probably Richmond myself.
I will, I'll get with Andy and we'll see
Yeah.
about getting him up here for a board meeting.
Yeah, that's not acceptable.
I have a question, I don't know if it's for you or Andy.
Okay?
Andy probably already knows it's coming.
It's probably what I was gonna ask.
The bridge on 619. Don't tell me it's being studied.
No, it's, you're talking about the,
the old railroad
The
bridge
old
is
railroad
shut
bridge
down.
on Gleaves Road.
yeah, I don't know how long it's gonna be closed. I know it's set to be replaced, but it was condemned. I got the information from the Bridge Division. I actually did, I know you were tied up in another meeting, and I spoke with Johnny Cancer just to inform him that the Bridge Division they closed the bridge. So it's gonna be closed until it's replaced. And I can get you some hard dates on that, from our bridge engineer. And, I can just shoot an email to you and get that information to you. But, yeah, they found that the structure of the bridge had just deteriorated to a point to where they had to close it. It was set to be replaced, and they were hoping that they could keep it open until the replacement, but the last inspection.
So it's just deteriorating, it hasn't been hit by farm equipment and messed up?
No, it's just,
Because that's what I had heard.
yeah, it was just
Of course,
rust and,
I'm sure them big tractors with wagons going across it full of silage that were pretty well, had to be over the weight limit, didn't help it. But
Yeah, I think the only thing holding it together are the Christmas lights that are tied to it there, so. So, yeah, it was
So
just,
you're saying it'll hold a couple tons?
yeah, if the lights are on, if the lights are on. But, so I'll just briefly, I know in the last meeting I mentioned that we were, purchasing a new paver in the residency so that our in-house crews could do some paving in lieu of the more rough, finish that we've been doing with the grader patching. And, we actually, started on, in your area, Old
Well,
Bank Road.
I've got half the county, so I mean, why
Yep.
would it not be in my area?
Right, so Old Bank Road, we actually broke in the guys on the paver on that route. They did a really good job. If you get a chance, ride through there, check it out. It's the older section, the older dead end section. So it's complete, did a good job. We've got, and basically what we're doing is now in lieu of the rougher grader patching, we're gonna start using that paver more often throughout the county and take care of some of these rough spots with actual pavement overlay. And we can do that at a much cheaper cost and also quicker than waiting on a route to be added to the paving plan. We can get out there and take care of some patching ourselves in-house, so. But I'll open up the floor for any questions that may have come about since Stephen sent me the last questions.
I got one, well, actually two. One I seen on the way here, but, Major Graham Road, right next to the intersection of Red Hollow Road where the Ball property is.
Mhm.
Is there any talks of getting a guardrail up right there?
Yes, I haven't been out that route lately, but we had requested for the reflective delineators to be installed. I don't know if that's been done yet. I'll check with the sign crew, but we were gonna do that, initially until we can get something going with the guardrail
Yeah,
there.
that last curve right there drops off into that, it's pretty steep there.
Yeah, I think last year, right after we paved the road, somebody went through the fence over that curve,
Correct.
so. And I think, I'll have to check, tomorrow, I'll take a ride out through that route, but I think we had requested that the sign crew install delineators to highlight that curve, especially at night. Because the way it's situated, it's higher than the fence row, so when you're driving up through there, your lights are shining above the fence, and I think that's what happened when the citizen crashed. And so you can't tell that there's a curve there until it's too late. So I'll check and see if the side markers have been installed, and then we'll look closer into a guardrail install.
All right, thank you. And then the last thing I got is I just noticed on the way up here this afternoon, at the intersection of Flying J and exit 77, on I guess it's the eastbound side, the potholes, they've been patched several times, but there's a big one there now.
Okay.
So I'll send you a note on that piece.
All right.
That's all I got.
Does anybody else have anything for?
Can I ask, who chooses where you put those curve signs?
Basically, it's case by case, so if you have a request, we'll go out and look at it.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out above my house, you know, that if you're coming down towards my house, there's a curve to the left, that if you miss that curve, you're going through a fence into a man's field. And they put those signs up there, but then if you go around that curve, the next curve, if you miss it, you're going off over a cliff, but there are none there. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, we'll look at that.
East on 619.
Yeah.
And that's coming between your house and Speedwell,
Yeah.
going back, okay,
It's just past where the guardrail came up there and stopped.
all right.
But I mean, I was just like,
And that's that little sharp curve right
yeah,
after we,
two little S, like
okay,
a S curve there.
we'll look at that.
I just thought that didn't, it didn't make sense to me, but, you know, a lot of things don't make sense to me, so.
Anybody else have any more complaints?
We'll call them recommendations.
Yeah.
In Burn Springs, from the, Foster Falls Road, south on Route 100 to the post office, the line of trees right there, still need, is that still, you said you was waiting on a tree trimming crew to come? through
Yeah,
that
and we
trim?
actually recently have a new we had a retirement, and we have a new person that's over the tree trimming crews, and the district has recently awarded, is the contract awarded for the roadside vegetation? So the contract is in place, and so we'll go out and look at that tomorrow. But there's a line of pine trees on 100 in Barron Springs, and they're overgrown. And when you're trying to pull out of, what's it?
It's either the church, post office, or the actual Foster Falls Road.
Yeah, you can't, it's basically restricts sight distance, so we need to have those trimmed, so.
Anybody else? I will, one positive, several weeks ago, for whatever reason, I ran into your ditching crew, like 2 or 3 different places. I think they thought I was following them. But they did a really good job. I know they were up on Wythe Mountain, and they done a good job ditching, so just pass our thanks on, especially if we get all this rain we're supposed to get off this hurricane.
Yeah, we actually, the district, well, I guess it's statewide, but our district has really been pushing a metrics to, that basically all of the residencies have to meet a certain lineal footage of ditching and pipe replacement and roadside vegetation and things of that nature. And so now they're starting to collect the data, and we have to meet, you know, you can't, you can't not do it. You have to meet that data. So we're working to meet that criteria, and that's why you're seeing more ditching out there, and we're gonna see more roadside vegetation trimmed and more culvert pipe replacement. And we're basically, with the culvert pipe, what we're doing at this point is documenting and entering the data, how many culvert pipes are out there. And then while doing that, we're also analyzing the condition of the culvert pipes. And so we're hoping by doing that we can replace some of these pipes before they fail, so.
All right, well, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, we have the Max Meadows Fire Department Memorandum of Agreement. Mr. Hankins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is an agreement that's been in development now for quite some time. Several of the board members have met with us and with the fire department to try to hammer out the details about how we go about putting part-time personnel in the Max Meadows Fire Station to respond particularly to daytime calls. Typically, this is going to be a 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Sort of arrangement, at least initially, until we can gauge how effective the program is. We have worked out the language that was a holdup for us, and the board, the fire department is prepared to vote on this this week. If you authorize the staff to sign off on the agreement after they've agreed to it, we should be able to proceed to advertising for part-time firefighters. I think at this point, we would hope to have them in place sometime around January 1st.
And I'm almost scared to open the floor for this motion, because there'll be a bunch of people jump, but.
So moved.
All right, have a motion by Mr. Smith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Terry. Is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
So approved. Right, we have a VACO voting credentials. Mr. Bear?
I would recommend the board appoint Chairman Vault, because I know he is going, and if any of the rest of you are going, as an alternate delegate, but it's probably only an alternate, because I'm pretty certain he's going to be there. I don't know if anyone else is going to the VACO meeting this year.
Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend this year.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to authorize myself to be the voting delegate.
So
moved.
Have a motion by Ms. Lawson, a second by Mr. Cook. Is there any argument or anybody else want to do it? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right, we have a fiscal year 23 expenditure budget, second quarter appropriation. You've all received a copy of that. I'll open the floor for a motion to approve the second quarter appropriations.
I'll make that motion.
All right, have a motion by Ms. Lawson. Do I have a second?
I'll second that one.
Have a second by Mr. Cook. Is there any questions or discussion? All right, here and now we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
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 So approved. Move on to staff reports. We have Assistant County Administrator, Mr. Hankins. By the way, congratulations, Mr. Hankins was inducted into the Emory and Henry Sports Hall of Fame this past weekend. Has been a football announcer since 1991 and has only missed 6 games. So, very
Congrats.
impressive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do have a few things to report tonight. First, or the only action item, well, I do have 2 action items. The first one is the Wythe Land Foundation grant. Kevin Williams and Elizabeth Delp worked on submitting the grant application. Mr. Bear and I reviewed it, made some changes at the end, working with the staff. Grant was submitted. The Wythe Land Foundation has offered a $50,000 grant toward the Ager Park Playground redevelopment. Staff applied for $500,000 for that project. It is likely to cost less than that, but we do not know until we put it out for bid and have a specific design what the actual cost will be. There are some additional grants available. The Wythe Land Foundation provided some guidance on places that we can reach out to try to get additional funding. Some of the playground equipment companies also are offering grants that we would probably expect to see as part of the RFP process. The question before you is whether or not to accept the $50,000 grant from the Wythe Land Foundation. The one question I had that Elizabeth asked back to Mr. Jackson and the foundation is if we develop something that is less than $500,000, if the grant amount will stay $50,000 from them. He indicated that yes, it would stay at the $50,000 because our grant indicated that we didn't know what the cost was. So we at least know that much is suitable. Mr. Williams can work on developing some fundraising if you want to try to engage the private sector in this project. We can certainly publicize it, make the public aware, and see what we can do on the fundraising side there. But we have to indicate to the Wythe Land Foundation by October the 1st that we accept their terms.
On the, I guess, second or third page of the agreement, it says the grantee agrees that projects whereby foundation funds are used for real property purchase and/or improvements, yada, yada, yada. And it says, when the property or the service is no longer needed, the grantee at the discretion of the grantor shall take one of the following actions: transfer the title to the property to the grantor, or repay the amount of the purchase and/or improvements provided by the foundation grant. Now, the way I read that is 20 years from now, when they decide that there's not going to be a playground or if something happens to that, park, we either have to repay the amount or give them the property. Am I reading that correctly, Mr. Farthing?
I've not seen the language of the grant. Is it in the package?
No, Mr. Hankins
Okay.
sent it to us.
I do read the language that way, Mr. Chairman. We can indicate in our response that we cannot agree to that specific term, although I think that our attorney, whether now or at that time, could make the case that we are not we're not signing over our interest in the property because it has met its useful life, and we will still be using the property for recreational purposes. And if you'd like, I can send that to Mr. Farthing, and we can come back to it.
Do what?
If you'd like, I can send that to Mr. Farthing, and he can review it while we talk about public safety radios.
Well, I mean, I've got several more problems with the awards or.
What was the reasoning for only providing 50,000?
Unfortunately, I can't speak to that. I'm not on the foundation board. We don't get a lot of feedback other than what comes in the letter. So I'm not sure what their reasoning was. This follows up on the grant that we submitted last year. It was essentially the same grant, but we had to update the numbers for, among other reasons, inflationary purposes this time.
Yeah, because it's kind of looking like they're not wanting to do anything for the county. Because we spoke with some of the fire chiefs last night at our fire and rescue meeting, and they've all, I shouldn't say all of them, several of them have applied for grants from the Wythe Land Foundation, and no money has been received. So I don't understand what the deal is. Why the county's not getting it, but you got the town of Wythe that was represented last night, and they got the money.
Well, and you know, my problem is, we asked for $500,000. They essentially agreed to give us 10% of the project. But yet in the agreement, you know, any press release or anything, we have to mention that they gave us money. But, you know, the problem I have is, this park is the most used park in the county. And there's a lot of apartment complexes and townhouses in the town of Whitfield that, you know, they don't have a big yard where kids can go play. And so they really utilize this. Now, part of the Wythe Land Foundation's purpose, I thought, was to promote healthy lifestyles. But yet we only get 10%. And then the Wythe Land Foundation was created when the hospital was sold, correct, Mr. Barry?
When it was leased, but yes, sir, correct.
And if you attended their anniversary ceremony a couple months ago, or if you walked into the lobby of the hospital in Whitfield right now, they have really nice big pictures of the history of the hospital. And guess who bought the land for the hospital? Mr. Barry?
It was done with the county through the IDA.
The Wythe County Board of Supervisors. But, you know, we get 50,000 for this park. The Millwall gets 50,000 for community engagement, whatever that means. So, you know, I have a problem with it. Y'all can do what you want to, but I'm voting not to accept it.
And I was gonna bring it up during supervisor's time, but I sent y'all an email just before this meeting with some pictures attached to it of Ager Park. And, you know, I also don't think we need to accept it because we can't take care of what we got. You know, I don't know how long ago it was, I talked about missing slats out of the fence just to keep the kids in. And not only, we didn't fix it, there's more of them. And I talked about the rubber bridge and how to fix the bridge. And what's our solution? Take the dang thing down. Okay, and in the process, leave big old bolts sticking out so a kid can run and fall and rip their head open on the bolt. Okay, I can't go out there without getting hot because we can't even take care of it. So if we can't take care of what we got, we don't need nothing else. We need to learn to take care of what we got before we worry about getting something else. I mean, that thing hasn't been painted in God knows how long. You would be surprised what a coat of paint would do to that place. That wood was meant to be stained. And now there's more wood showing than there is paint left on it. And we paid the guy, we paid our rec director the whole time of COVID when nothing else was going on. Could have been out there painting, doing something. I don't know what we paid him for. But we dang sure didn't pay him for that part. The leaves in the outfield of that fence on the upper side up there, the leaves are all blown in the corner. You know, the first time I went out there, those leaves were in the corner. Right where the lawnmower was around, and they're getting higher and higher on that fence. I mean, I hate to get up on a soapbox, but this park thing, first off, now they took the bridge down, it's unsafe. There are 6 bolts across there sticking out, I know, a good 2 to 3 inches, and a kid could fall and rip his head open, wide open on it. So if nothing else, it should be shut down for safety. So when the parents talk about it's a safe, unsafe environment, they're not lying now. And like I said, those dang slats, how hard is it to go out there and take a board and nail up, put a nail on the top and a nail on the bottom to keep kids in? It's ridiculous. So my vote is gonna be that we don't accept it either. Because I don't agree with it anymore. It's a great idea till you see what we can't even take care of what we got. And I just don't wanna spend taxpayers' money or any other money on something we're not gonna take care of.
I understand your concerns. The maintenance over the last year, it should always be kept in a safe situation. It has not gone in and done the entire staining or all of that because the plans were to get a Wythe Bland Foundation grant and take the whole thing out, that it's lived its useful life and it needs to be done. So I would not accept the grant because of that, because it needs to come out regardless. And we need a new, modern play system go in there of the plastic or rubberized materials, not the wood structure that is there anymore. That's one of the reasons why they included the Wythe Bland Foundation, which I don't agree with. They included that due to potential soil contamination from the preservatives discussed during the pre-application meeting, it may be necessary, or it will be necessary, to have soil testing report completed prior to grant disbursement. They have really gotten down into the weeds of micromanaging the project. And I asked them on other projects, I said, did you get into micromanaging to that level? Did you ask for asbestos reports on other things in the process? I think it is going above and beyond what Wythe Bland Foundation needs to be doing in trying to micromanage that project.
And you know, and I don't begrudge anybody that got a grant, but you bring up a good point. You know, they gave $150,000 to put a new roof on Spiller Annex. I hope they're looking at that deal.
That's a fact.
Well, they giving you 10%, then they got all these requirements that we've gotta meet.
Yeah, no,
To me, that doesn't work.
yeah.
Well, everybody's just in a bad mood. Must be a full mood. Y'all not eat before the meeting?
Did not, it's probably a good thing.
All right, I'll open the floor if anybody wants to make a motion.
I'm sure I won't have the support, it doesn't sound like it, but I'll make the motion
Make the motion.
that we accept the 50,000.
All right, I have a motion by Ms. Lawson. Is there a second? Going once? Going twice? All right, motion dies for lack of a second. Now, moving on to, what else, Mr. Hankins?
Well, if you were in a bad mood before, I'm going to take 3 steps back. This is your updated public safety radio upgrades. You've got 3 sheets of paper in front of you. After our last meeting, question came up from one of the chiefs about the use of paging. The plan had been to use the portable radios. You can do paging through those radios. Not everybody likes to or wants to carry a portable radio on their hip all day if they're used to carrying a pager or would prefer to carry a pager. And if you're not familiar with pagers, they're, not quite cell phone size, but they're similar, probably more like a couple of cell phones stacked together. They monitor what's going on. So if you hear the emergency alert, it beeps, it sends you a message that your agency has been toned out. With the digital paging, you can listen to the radio traffic that's going on, but you cannot with a pager connect to dispatch. You can't talk to anybody else who's responding. But the pagers that have been priced here are a big step up from the pagers that I used to wear in fire service. They will display your call information. It has a small screen on it so that if you hear that you're being paged but you don't hear exactly what was said, you can refer back to that. So it does give you some information to help you respond. In emails back and forth, a couple of you expressed interest in adding paging back. We also, because we're trying to get the radio system right, we ask other chiefs. We had two agencies that use paging now, so we asked the other chiefs and the other agencies if there was a need. Several of them expressed interest that they would like to have the paging because it does give a couple of layers of protection. If you damage a portable radio, hopefully you'll still at least have a pager that you can respond with. So naturally that drove our cost up. So in looking at adding the paging, which this will be a digital paging, there are some deletions that come out of the UHF system that was designed. There are some additions though for things that had to be added back in, some additional tower work, some additional wiring, and a few other pieces of equipment. Taking into account the deductions, that makes our project cost go from $1,017,000 down to $945,000. That leaves the equipment as a standalone purchase, which we can do on state contract through ProCom. And the cost for that equipment is $517,247 for a total project cost of $1,461,801.10. If that's the direction that you want to go, you can authorize that tonight. That's your first two action items. We would need budget action to get the money moved into the right place. So there's a draft resolution amending and appropriating the budget to cover those costs. I'll be glad to answer any questions you've got to the extent that I'm able to answer.
I have one. According to your thing, you're saying that only Rural Retreat and Max Meadows use pagers now?
That was my understanding.
I know Speedwell has pagers.
Okay. Then those are replacements as well.
It used to be that every department paged. I mean, because that was the only way we had. So I thought we all still paged.
It's my understanding that not everybody does. Ivanhoe, I think, was an issue, and Barron Springs.
They may have some of them gone away from it. I don't know. I knew Speedwell still pages. The other thing is, for the board members more than it is for you, I had a fire department member that brought it up to me, and it makes good sense. He carries a radio most time, but he also has a pager. And his reasoning is that when you go into a church or something like that, you can turn your radio off or you can turn the volume down, but you can't put it on vibrate like you can a pager. So if you're in a situation where you don't want something blaring out, there's really no way to do it with the radios.
Jesus shouldn't get mad that you're gonna go help save somebody's house.
Jesus may not, but if you're in a funeral or something, you may not want it blurting out. I'm not saying, that was just a comment he made. But, the other thing was, when we were, I mean, it's maybe too late or I don't know, but when we looked at the VHF and then we decided to go to the UHF, I was told by someone that Two-Way at one time had a bunch of VHF frequencies did we check with them to see if there's any chance we could buy them from them or anything like that?
We did not. They were the high bidder on the, or the high proposer on the request that we put out. And they were high by a pretty significant amount, so we didn't award the project to them. I can talk to them and ask and see if the VHF frequencies would be available.
I mean, it might be an option, and obviously you'd be going back to the VHF instead of the UHF, but that was also costing more money to go to UHF.
But I think even if you get a frequency, you still have to have the state police, the highway patrol.
To approve it?
To sign a
Okay.
waiver or whatever.
They have to agree that your frequency won't interfere with their operations.
Okay. Well, it was just a question that was brought up to me, so.
Because I think I think the problem is most of the ones that are available are all on the 1.5, 1.6, whatever wavelength, which is close to VSP, North Carolina and
I
Tennessee.
understand that.
And they're not going, they're not gonna take a chance of you messing with their stuff.
Excuse me.
Okay. That was all I had.
All right, so what's the pleasure of the board?
So just the pagers themselves have added another 400,000 to this budget?
No, sir. The pagers are item number 6 on the budget there. It's $112,968. Most of the rest of the cost was covered last time in the switch over from the VHF frequencies to the UHF. So this is in addition to what we talked about last time.
Well, my question was, are these pagers causing us to have to do the extra licensing fees, the extra tower work, the extra warranty? I mean, are they basically the cause of this 400,000 upgrade?
No, sir. It's the changeover from the VHF frequencies to the UHF frequencies. Most of the cost here is replacing the existing portable and mobile radios with new portables and mobiles that operate on the UHF frequency, not the VHF. So the plan had been take the UHF, or put in place the UHF equipment, take the VHF out of service and sell it for surplus to try to recover some of these costs back.
All right. I'll open the floor for motion.
We'll see if this one works better for me. I'll make that motion that we appropriate I guess I still need to do the total 444, 149.
I would do them in the bottom of this letter, number 1, the first authorization.
Authorize the change order first for 900, from $1,017,652 to $944,554 for the
Yes,
project.
exactly what he said.
All right.
Unless you need me to read it.
Have a motion authorizing the change order by Ms. Lawson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Terry. Is there any more questions or discussion on that item? All right, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 So approved. All right, next we have entertain a motion to authorize staff to work with Procom to purchase the required radio and pager equipment under state contract.
I will make that motion as long as we get the radios and the pagers that they need.
All right, have a motion by Mr. Horny. Do I have a second?
Second. Well,
Have a second by Mr. Smith. Is there any questions or discussion on that one? All right, do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
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 So approved. Next, Entertain a motion to approve the resolution presented by Mr. Hankins that appropriates $444,149.10 to reserve, from the reserve funds to line item 9,047,0232.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Terry. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Ms. Lawson. Is there any questions or discussion on that? Right, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 All right, anything else, Mr. Hankins?
At the risk of catching up to the amount of time taken by the treasurer tonight, I will, I will ask.
I have to fund that project.
There is one thing under personnel. I included a job description, a draft job description for our animal control officer. Arlen Dunford has announced that he's going to be retiring at the end of October. So we'll be advertising for this as long as there's nothing that you see in the job description that you would like to change or update. And it's a pretty extensive change from what has been the job description for the animal control and litter control officer.
I did have one question, if I can find it. It had to do with the training requirement. If you can point me in that. Oh, under education, should be law enforcement certified in animal control. Can you explain to me what that means? I've never heard of
Yes, sir, there's a animal control school that's conducted through the academy. That's my understanding. So it's my impression that all animal control officers have to go through that. The town of Wythe, I believe, sending a couple of folks through under that program here in the coming weeks. So,
but I think law enforcement certification is completely different than animal control certification. You can be certified as an animal control officer and not certified as a law enforcement officer. The way this reads is they have to be certified in both. Sheriff?
I'll amend the
Is
language.
that correct?
To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know.
Because Arlen is certified in both.
He is.
I know that around a lot of surrounding counties, they're falling under the authority of the sheriff, which they do not in Wythe County. So I don't know what your threshold is as far as your training goes.
Would you like for them to?
No,
Who made that motion? That was my only question. It's because you're talking, what is it, 18 weeks? for the law?
I'll make that clarification.
Okay.
The expectation is that they at least have an animal control certification. We would prefer to hire somebody with a higher level of training, but we don't know until we advertise it.
That was all I had. Does anybody else have anything on that? All right, anything else, Mr. Hankins?
Just one real quick note, the Regional Improvement Commission, we met again last week, we elected officers. The expectation based on the first couple of months of the operation of the casino in Bristol is that we're actually going to be a little better off than I thought we were going to be. I've been pessimistically projecting between 500,000 and 600,000 coming back to each of the 14 localities that are covered by the commission, and if the first couple of months hold true, we're probably looking more at a little over 700,000 in the first year. Those won't be paid out until next August, so it'll be fiscal year '24 before we see that money. And
Who
that's it.
decided that they only pay out annually?
The General Assembly, code says that they may issue, that the Regional Commission may make, or must make annual payments. And despite my arguments to at least make quarterly payments, the general read from the attorneys is that the General Assembly says pay annually, so we pay annually. The lottery will be paying the commission on a quarterly basis, so the first payment comes in next month, but then that has to be held in the bank account until we're ready to make a disbursement. And the commission so far has agreed that we should not disperse until the first full year's operations at the casino have been completed.
So I'm sure Hard Rock's holding that in an interest-free account, correct?
Actually, we have to set up our own account, so they make the payments to the lottery. The lottery makes the payments to the regional commission and to the other groups that it has to fund out of those gaming tax proceeds. So we set up our own account, and we've been pretty happy with some of the responses we got back from the banks. Ms. Glenn will be pleased to know that the bank that we're working with, we're going to be paid 2.75% on that money. So that will fund the audit and legal expenses and the operational expenses of the commission, and give a little bit more back to the localities than we expected.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hankins. Mr. Bear, County Administrator.
One action item for you tonight, the Fort Cheswell wastewater treatment plant expansion. As you know, we're in the middle of a design of that expansion. I request that the board approve Aqua Aerobic System as the sole source provider for the sequencing battery reactor equipment for the plant expansion. If you have any questions, I'm very glad to say Zach is here from Thrasher to help us answer that. But basically, Aqua Aerobics is a system that's in the current wastewater treatment plant, so expanding, we are adding to that system and also updating some of the systems associated with that. Recommend, and as we did the expansion in 2006 or 7, I think it was, we did the same thing and continued with Aqua Aerobics in that. My recommendation would be to approve that. Thrasher has reviewed it. They've reviewed the cost estimates with some other projects they have bid out recently and agreed that the cost that Aqua Aerobics is providing us is within reason, and recommends proceeding with them, and would request you all approve that sole source designation so staff can take the necessary steps to post that as required.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Aqua Aerobic System as sole source provider.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Horning, have a second.
Second.
Have a second by Mr. Cook. Is there any questions or discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So approved.
Rest of my report is all informational. If there's any questions any of y'all have, you can bring them up tonight, or feel free to get in touch with me tomorrow. Anything else to discuss?
The commercial meter information, can we keep that on our agenda? Because I'd like to see an update. I'm still not 100% sold on that. I don't think we were given complete information when that was brought up to us and we voted on it. We never discussed apartment complexes or trailer parks or anything like that. We were told commercial. So. All right, anything else, Mr. Barrett?
No, sir.
Does anybody have anything for Mr. Barrett?
No.
All right, moving on to County Attorney, Mr. Farthing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had emailed a task list to you all yesterday afternoon. If you have any questions, I met with Mr. Bear this morning. We talked about it a little bit, took a few things off. Had a response from the chairman there about a matter that had been taken care of that had been sitting on the list for a long time. That's the skirting violation. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to address those, but nothing to bring up and discuss with you from my point of view this evening.
All right, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Farthing? All right, move on to board reports. We have Buildings and Grounds Committee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have 4 items. The first item is awarding the Franklin Street roof replacement project to Umberger Construction at a low bid of $78,482. And to accept change order number 1, adding the zip board at $1,000 and installing the anchor system based on the updated truss drawing at $4,200.
All right, coming from committee, it doesn't need a second. Is there any questions or discussion on that one? All right, here none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 So approved.
The second item is replacing the flooring in the health department nurse's workstation, room 323, at the health department's expense.
All right, coming from committee, it doesn't need a second. Any questions or discussion on that one?
Who's paying for that?
At their
At the
expense.
health department's
That's, okay, out there, okay, I didn't catch that, I'm sorry.
Any more questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, Mr. Cook?
Aye.
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 So approved.
Number 3, contracting Jarvis Tree Services to trim the 5 elm trees located around the old courthouse at a cost of $5,000, trimming and cleanup.
All right, coming from committee, it doesn't need a second. Is there any questions or discussion on that one? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 So approved.
And the final matter is authorizing V&M to close the trash collection centers on December 24th, 2022. This will allow for the centers to be closed December 24th and 25th for the Christmas holiday.
Right, does anybody have any questions on that? Come from the committee, doesn't need a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So approved. Anything else from the Buildings and Grounds Committee?
No, Chairman, there is not.
All right, we'll move on to supervisors' time. Mr. Terry?
The only thing I have, Mr. Chairman, is just following back up with Mr. Bayer. At our previous meeting, Mr. Bayer, we talked about the lease at the Roy Tree Fairgrounds with the Tractor Club. I know Mr. Griffith is here tonight, and just curious if we know anything about the possibility of him moving forward with this project.
Do not have any information, but be glad to follow up and see what we can do. Confirm that the other parties are still interested in continuing with their lease.
Perfect. And that's all I've got, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Mr. Horny?
I don't have anything at this time.
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Chairman, I got a couple of things. The first thing is I had the honor and privilege to present this proclamation for the Fort Chisholm Church of God's 25th year anniversary, and I'd like to read it if you don't mind. Whereas the Fort Chisholm Church of God has served the Wythe County community for 25 years, and whereas the Fort Chisholm Church of God is a multi-generation Pentecostal church located on Fort Chisholm Road in Max Meadows, and whereas the Fort Chisholm Church of God, a spirit-filled church, strives to make a positive impact on the community for the cause of Christ, and whereas the mission of the Fort Chisholm Church of God is also to bring hope and inspiration to change the world through various ministries for the very young to the very old, the hearing impaired as well. Now therefore, Wythe County does hereby recognize Fort Chisholm Church of God for its 25th year, or 25 years of service and dedication to the community, and adopt this proclamation with gratitude and praise. Adopted this 27th day of September 2022 and signed by our chairman, Brian W. Alt. And Mr. Chairman, I would make that motion to have this adopted and entered into our official minutes for tonight's meeting.
All right, have a motion by Mr. Smith. Do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second by Stereo. Mr. Terry, was that you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Is there any questions or discussion on that? I will just say that they do a good job in the community, have a lot of fundraisers and charitable work, so thank them on behalf of the board. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So approved, and I would ask that, Mr. Smith, you'll deliver that proclamation.
I will. And on behalf of the Fort Chisholm Church of God, they asked me to thank everybody for adopting this, and it was received well by the congregation and the leadership of that church, and they're very thankful that we recognize it. The next thing I have, Mr. Chairman, the Fire and Rescue Committee did meet yesterday. and we recommends the following: to amend and appropriate $150,000 for the Speedwell Volunteer Fire Department purchase of air packs. Account 32025-46-1400.
And that came from Fire and Rescue?
It did.
All right. Coming from committee, does it need a second? Is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Anything else, Mr. Smith?
That's all, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Ms. Lawson,
I have nothing at this time.
Mr. Burnett,
I have a few items. I was talking to someone that lives on Dufford Road, and they was asking about the water. They was under, and I wasn't familiar with any water projects out around Dufford Road. So if I could get a update if there is one and what the status is on that.
Yeah, there is. I'll get you information on it.
Okay. I've been asked about if it's possible to get some signs at the recycling center that says Wythe County residents only, if that's applicable. Or something to try to stave off, the out-of-county residents coming, especially, well, in all three of the ones in the lead mines district. The next one's for the sheriff. I've been asked about the signs for the school zones. And if all the signs are up, or if we're expecting more signs.
All the signs are currently in place.
Okay.
Yes, sir. The cameras are not.
And the cameras are not,
We're
but
still
the
working
signs
on
are.
those. There are officers who are individually conducting LiDAR, and some of these are being issued at this time, being mailed out, just depending on where the officer's at in his day. We send him to a different school zone every day. He may work Port Chisholm day this morning, he may work, Speedwell in the evening. So
Thank you.
they're always in one of those, yes.
All right, thank you. And the last item I had was I'm looking forward to what we can do with the elderly tax exemption when it comes to the board.
when's that scheduled?
Next, board meeting.
Okay. I knew we scheduled, but I couldn't.
And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Burnett. Mr. Cook?
I have nothing this time.
And I have nothing. I think I got all my soapbox issues out earlier. Next item on the agenda is closed meeting under 2.2-3711A3, acquisition or disposition of real property, the Apex property, and I will add 2.2-3711A1, personnel matters to discuss Parks and Rec Director. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Smith. Second by Mr. Terry. Is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're now in closed session after a 5-minute recess.
Me too.
Entertain a motion to come out of closed session.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Burnett, a second by Mr. Terry. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're now back in open session on the record. Mr. Terry, if you'll read the certification.
Whereas the Wythe County Board of Supervisors has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors that such a meeting was conducted in conformity with the Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Wythe County Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by the Virginia law were discussed in this closed meeting to which the certification resolution applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, and are considered by the Wythe County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Chairman, I'll make that a motion.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Terry, a second by Mr. Smith. Is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote with Mr. Cook.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
So approved. Mr. Barrett, you have anything else?
No, sir.
Mr. Farthing?
No, sir.
Mr. Hankins?
My battery's dead, so no, sir.
All right, Ms. Collins? Besides wanting to go home. All right, we'll be adjourned.